Eric, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for having me at your offices. I think it's my first time here.
It is your first time here, and I'm so thrilled that you came out to meet with us.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I do appreciate it. This video is sponsored by Rank Ranger, an all-in-one SEO platform that offers dozens of customizable tools and reports. Check them out at rankranger.com. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of SEO. Obviously, we talked about your history, the sale, what you want to do next. We talked about community, but let's really get into SEO. So I had some questions. Obviously, I like to talk about algorithms and stuff like that. But before we do that, I assume you have lots of clients that over the years, especially over like the 22, 25 years or so of doing SEO. And you probably have a lot of data from your clients. How do you compare like testing based on your client data versus and you've also interviewed a lot of engineers that work at search engines. So engineers or Googlers might say X, your data might say Y. How do you kind of like mash the difference or understand the difference?
Well, one of the interesting aspects of SEO, and this is a pretty important value proposition in terms of why should a client engage an agency. Not that I'm trying to sell any services here, but just it's an interesting.
You can sell, it's fine.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Just click here.
Prices, but the SEO tactic that you use that works so well on client A,
right,
might not work so well on client B.
Yes.
And it isn't that the idea was wrong. The idea might be right, but there might be the rest of the story that's guiding how Google is interpreting their rankability and SEO value, if you will, isn't lined up the same way for client B as it was for client A.
Right.
So you have to realize that because there's so many aspects to the system, the overall organic ranking system, you can have something that works for 4 clients that doesn't work for 3 other clients and that conflicts with something that someone at Google said. So it doesn't inherently mean that Google is misrepresenting something or lying. It just, don't get me wrong, there's places where I believe deliberately position what they're saying to create a reaction that they find desirable.
Okay.
I do think that does happen, but the whole mobilegeddon thing was an example of that, right? I think it's a complex environment. So what you've got to try to do is keep your mind really open and keep sort of the emotional, they're lying to us or that out of it. I think that's pretty rare, actually. But just try to piece together, how can something this complex, how can that statement and this observation and this other statement and this different observation, how can all those things still hold together in some way that makes sense?
Right.
So don't try to close your brain down into, link building has this impact, or publishing content in this volume has that impact, or adjusting these titles. It's not that simple.
What it used to be, right? Back in the old days.
Of course. The first site I published was online-motorcycle-parts.com. We ranked number 2 in Google for motorcycle parts in 7 days.
And then you can also be part of these link networks. Any anchor text you want, bam, in a matter of minutes.
Right.
So that's how the algorithms have changed over the years. It used to be pretty simplistic, and now it's not.
Definitely. Although this is something that people at Google will tell you if you talk to them about it. They will say that the industry is overcomplicating what they do, and it's actually quite a bit simpler than everybody tries to think it is. And I actually tend to believe what they're saying on this score. And there's a related thing that I want to take the opportunity. This is one of my little pet peeves.
Go ahead.
We have all these people out there, they talk about machine learning like machine learning is the algorithm.
Right.
No, it's not. It's a technology they apply to accomplish certain things, and they apply it certain ways to do that. But what you have to get back to is stop worrying about the machine learning algorithm and recognize what they're using the machine learning algorithm to do. Because if you focus on what they're trying to do with the algorithm, which basically is they're trying to serve the best results so they get the best overall engagement with Google search, because that's how they preserve their market share and drive the most ad clicks, right? And I'm not trying to make them into Mother Teresa here, they're a business.
Right.
But it turns out that serving the best search results does serve their business.
Yep.
So that's what they're using machine learning algorithms to do. So if you can loop back through that, given that that's the case, let's put aside all the SEO for a moment. What should I do? I should publish really good stuff I use stuff instead of a different word. You should publish really good stuff. You should promote it really well, make sure people know about it, and care a lot about user experience. And now I'm sounding like I'm preaching.
No, it's true. I mean, people ask me, what's my number one SEO advice? And I always say, you should build a site or pages that Google will be embarrassed not to rank well.
Yes, of course.
That's a simple answer.
Right, or people will complain if it isn't ranking well. It's the other way of putting it.
That's exactly.
And then there's this whole thing, like, the algorithms over the past 18 months, right? I actually did a webinar with Rand Fishkin, I don't know, 7 days ago. Yeah. Great event. It's wonderful to be able to talk with him.
Yep.
But on that, I talked a little bit about, this is another major thing people are missing, is we've gotten so rooted in what we do is we do the research and we find the 6 top ranking keywords related to my market space, and I go produce a piece of content for all of them, and then I'm done.
Right.
And it's the wrong way of thinking. What you need to be thinking about instead is, how do I satisfy the maximum percentage of users to my site? Probably all of them have questions that start with those 6 keywords you built pages for, but there's, amongst the group of them, there's like 20 other questions that you haven't addressed. So you might have gotten all of them to your site and satisfied none of them. So you have to be thinking about the breadth and depth of your content in a way that's completely different than SEOs have been conditioned to think.
Cool. I have a lot more questions, but we're kind of running out of time. Overall, my last question on Google, we kind of touched on this, is do you think Google's become more or less transparent over the years, specifically around their algorithms and SEO?
I think you could get Matt Cutts to say things that it's a little harder to get people to say today. So I could argue that they're somewhat less transparent, but I actually don't. But I think that's so specific to just Matt Cutts and what he was.
But he was more
what he could be,
right,
because of how early he was in the company and the degree of leeway they gave Matt, that they're just not going to give to Gary Ish or a Martin Splitt or a John Mueller. So, but I think they're still trying.
And quickly, you've had lots of clients. I'm sure they've had ups and downs over the years in terms of doing really well, the algorithm hitting them dropping down, and you having to recover. What would be your recommendation to another SEO company that's dealing with a client that had a sudden downturn in their rankings? How do you communicate? What advice do you give to that SEO agency to deal and to how they should handle with their client? What's the best approach?
The first thing is, if you have a policy of just being transparent with your clients, which is, I think, the right policy.
Yeah, for sure.
From the very beginning, you have to try to be in a position of educating them of what search really is and what's driving Google. I did talk about this whole notion of understanding what Google's trying to do, and I always talk to them about, we know where Google's going. So I draw a little thing in the sky and I said, Google's going here.
Right.
We're here right now.
Right.
Instead of worrying about this or that algorithm here, point your strategy here, and then Google will reward you over time, presumably. But the reality is you're going to have ups and downs. So all these algorithm updates that started in March of 2018, there was so much about content and breadth and depth of content, in my opinion, and all those. And people talk about EAT. I talk about it a little bit differently, but yeah, you're going to have things where they tweak this knob and that dial, and you go down.
So it sounds to me that you're basically trying to say, make sure your client's on the same path in terms of long-term goals, not short-term gains or drops.
You try to do that. No.
It's kind of like financial advice. Like when you sit down with the financial,
it is.
Don't worry about the up and downs now. You have a 10, 20, 30, 50-year timeline, depending on how old you are, and forget about the ups and downs and just stay long-term focused. Is that kind of similar?
That's the right concept. Now the problem is that most of these companies have executives have a bonus that they do at the end of the year, and they're panicking when it takes a hit. And
they have to produce their quarterly results and
so that makes it tough. So it's not an easy conversation.
Okay. Anyway, how could people learn more about you, follow you and stuff like that?
So my Twitter handle is still @StoneTemple, and you can go to the Perficient Digital site, or just search on Eric Enge in Google, and you'll see.
You'll find a few pages or two.
Yeah, you might.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
that was talking with the Perficient Digital team and Eric from Perficient Digital, formerly Stone Temple Consulting. Really, really great guy. So happy that I was able to interview him at his place, and it was just great. Off to the next vlog.